Hello and welcome to the first edition of Elvenhome for 2022, and Happy New Year to you all. This episode really looks principally at one thing that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I'll tell you what that is in just a moment. But it also, I realised as I was putting it together, picks up on three other things that I've been thinking about. And I realised that the inspiration, a la Hornby, for this idea has come from the same subscriber, Dave Auger, who in comments to me at the end of videos has suggested one thing or another. So you'll discover the trio of things that Dave has mentioned to me over the last couple of videos, which I deal with for various reasons as we go through this episode. So now, let me go back just over a week as I was about to embark on something that I'd been wanting to do but didn't have the courage to start doing. All will be revealed. A project that I've had in mind to do for some little while now was to try to fit sound to a locomotive where it doesn't natively come with it. The sound locomotives that I have, which is three, they're all Graham Farish, 3 Castle locomotives and an 8F, all use Next 18 decoders. And so it's an easy job to just buy a sound decoder, take out either the blanking plate or the ordinary Next 18 decoder and put in a sound chip, and away you go. Because the Castles, you have to fit a speaker. That is something else you have to do. The 8F, you don't even have to do that. And in fact, I think Graham Farish is standard now. Once they enable a model to work with sound, they just put a sound speaker in and is wired in. So the Class 40 is like that, the 8F's like that. As I understand it, the Black 5 that's due out later this year will similarly already be wired in for sound. So, but there are plenty of locomotives which don't. I've chosen to use a Dapol A4 because I happen to have a spare tender for a Dapol A4. My first version of Seagull that I had decided to bend its motion. Never really understood why it decided to bend its motion. It did, and part of what it bent was the bit that is attached to the body shell of the A4. Now that makes it really difficult to replace. I did try, but it just wasn't, despite super glue and everything else that I tried, it just didn't. It's the devil's own job to change the motion on the body of an A4. Rather handily, or well, not so handily, Dapol closed down their membership scheme, and as a part of, rather than repaying my membership fee, I was able to buy a new Dapol A4 for about £80, I think. And so I got a new version of Seagull. The original version of Seagull was stripped right down, partly because I was interested to see how easy it is to get in to a Dapol A4, to which the answer is it isn't at all. It's really difficult. But it gives me lots of spare parts should I ever need them for an A4. The only thing I didn't change was the tender. I left the tender because there was nothing wrong with the tender, but it meant I had a spare tender. So I've already on this tender changed the motor, which I did some time ago, and I think I mentioned it in a video about 3-4 months ago. So the motor that's sitting in this tender is the new Tram Fabrique coreless motor. What I've done so far is obviously detach the tender from the locomotive, which you would do anyway. I really wouldn't try and work on this attached to the locomotive, quite apart from the little bar that comes from, if I get this info so you can see it, the little bar that goes from the motor to the gearing in the locomotive. You've got those very fine cables that sit underneath that really a puff of wind will break. So it's much better just undo the 2 wires there, remove the tie bar that connects it to the locomotive, and then you've got this to work on separately. I've already undone the PCB. This sits on two raised prongs here, which we're going to be taking off actually, because the speaker is going to sit here and it can't sit here with those two things there. I've read extensively the YouChoos guides, very good guides from YouChoos. I got in touch with YouChoos John just to make sure I was getting the right decoder and speaker combination, because I'm using the cordless motor, and so he's given me advice, and that's the basis on which I've bought the decoder, which is, he said, this decoder, MX649F. I think 648 is the one that's more commonly used, but they didn't have any of those. But this will do just as well. It's just a slightly different sized PCB. The PCB is thinner but longer. And all that will mean is that I'll have to take more out of the roof of the tender, which we'll come to. Now, I'd hoped that there was a video of somebody doing this that I could follow, and there isn't. In a way, I'm not surprised, because I don't intend to video myself doing this step by step. This is the first one I've done. I'm nervous enough as it is without trying to video myself morrising around with a soldering iron and working with all these fine wires. What I will try and do is come back at various stages to show you how I'm getting on. What I know already is that this comes wired to a 6-pin harness. I won't need the 6-pin harness, and there's far too much cable here for what I need. I don't need the yellow and white. Those are for lights, I think. The 4 cables I'm going to need are the 4 cables you could see on there, which is the red and black, which goes to the pickups, and the grey and orange, which goes to the motor. And that's how power comes into the decoder and back out again to the motor. The cables at the other end, these 3, blue, brown and green, are if you're adding some other thing, like a sound, well, I think smoke generators, that's what I was trying to think of. And I think flickering lights and that sort of thing. But I'm not going to be doing anything of the kind, so I will cut those right back. I just don't need them. I've got a 9mm sugar cube speaker, which very kindly has been wired in for me. I think that's probably too much cable by some considerable degree, but I'll have a look. If I can get away without having to unsolder and resolder those, I shall. These will be cut back reasonably close, I think, not too close, because if I come back to this model, you will see that the cable lengths are not very long. Rather confusingly, Tramfabrique, instead of putting black on the motor, you put blue. Now, I suspect that's a European thing. In fact, thinking about it, don't we do that now? No, we have blue and brown, don't we, in plugs. So for that, read black. And you can see how the orange and grey go to the positive and minus, or well, left and right of the motor. So I will replace these to the grey and the orange on the decoder. I will have to make some changes here. These have got to be removed and brought down so that the sugar cube speaker can sit down in this space. But it mustn't go too far down, because otherwise it will stop the wheels from turning. So I need to judge that quite finely. And what I will do, I think, is get to the point where I've got the sugar cube speaker sat where I want it to be, and ready to start attaching the wires in here. I've got to take this off. There's no two ways about that. These have got to be unsoldered from the pickups, which appear to have, I don't know if you can see there, a covering over them, and I think I need to try and pry that off somehow. That's not too hard. That's coming off quite nicely. and I may be able to reuse those so that the connection is shielded, which would be a good thing to do. So I will come back once I've got the speaker seated and am ready to start soldering things up, just to talk you through. As I said, I am not going to film this. If I get really good at doing this, and I've done lots of them, I may do. But I'm not about to start putting the curse of the film camera on this first installation of a sound decoder. So I'll speak to you when I've got that piece of work done. The first of the three things that I'm going to mention in this video that Dave Auger raised with me over the last couple of videos was to do with what might be at the depot in addition to the engine shed, because there's lots of locomotives, there's obviously going to be lots of men working here. And he said that the next thing that I really needed to think about building, quite reasonably, was some kind of mess facility for the people that work here. And I thought, yes, that makes a lot of sense. I should have a think about that. Let's see what's about, what do they sort of look like? And in my researches, I discovered that I think it's an issue this year. Scenecraft, the Graham Farish Scenecraft, have issued a mess building in the Scenecraft range. And lo and behold, the model centre had one. So if I take you to the other end of the layout, you will now see in the centre of your screen the new mess building. I'll just reach over and bring it a bit closer. And bring it into focus. So it's a mess building together with a lavatory. I don't think I could have done any better myself if I'd have, that sounds terribly conceited. I don't think I could have built something better, that's better, than this. It's hollow, so it would be easy enough to put a light inside. And the end where this sits is not on the board, which causes me all the problems of lighting this bottom end. So I think I probably will put a light inside so that it's got some light. And actually it could go down into the power board that I'm using for the market, because that's sitting pretty much underneath where that is. Putting that down in its place, I'll just put it back. It's amazing how much difference it makes when you do put something in place, because it's begun to make me think about what sits at this end of the layout. As you can see, I did so much with the intention of coming back at some point. And putting that little building in there is beginning to help me see in my mind's eye what this end of the depot will look like. So I think it's quite possible that I shall get on with the scenic work around this bottom end to complete the depot, because that would be in keeping with what I said many moons ago, which was that I was going to do the scenic work from the back of the layout moving forward. And on the whole, I've kept with that. I've not forgotten High Elven, if I move around to High Elven, but something is bugging me about High Elven, and I'm not sure what it is. All I know is that whenever something has bugged me in the past about this layout, it's always been a good idea to not rush and do something. There's something about, I think, not sure, I think the board is too big and it needs to be cut back somehow. But again, I'm certainly not going to rush into doing that, because if I cut it back and then think, no, it was the right size in the first place, then I'm going to be in trouble. So I will be doing High Elven, but only once I'm really sure I want it to be that big and that I can really see how it's all gonna look. So that's this brief interlude, and so now what we can do is return back to the work in hand. Okay, well, the butchery has been done. What I've done so far, if I bring this up here, oops, there we go. the old PCB has been removed. Ta-da! So the black and the red have been removed from the motor. And these two wires that went to orange and grey have also been separated. So the two posts here and here on which the PCB screwed into have had to be removed, because that's where the speaker goes. And you'll see I have removed the wires from the speaker because they are just too long. There'll be too much wire trying to operate in here, and I'll shorten them when I shorten the other ones. The other thing that's been done is butchery to the coal load. That needs to be done to allow this PCB, or this decoder rather, to just pop above, because it sits too high otherwise. So that's been done very gingerly, but has been done and has been completed. And the next stage is to wire all this in, which is what I'm going to go off and do now. I will come back when I've completed that wiring. But put simply, now that that's been flattened, you can see that the sugar cube speaker sits in there and the wheels still turn. They're not lying on the wheels. And that's the critical thing. And the speaker, when it sits there, is no higher, you'll see it's no higher than the motor casing. Phew. So the thing to do now is just to gird myself and get on with the business of chopping wires that I don't need and wiring in the ones that I do need. And I will come back once I've got that done, because hopefully if I get it done and do it correctly, I'll be able to put this on, and then we'll work on putting some real coal on the top to cover over that big hole. See you then. Well, here you can see it, it's all wired up. I've tested it on the programming track just to make sure I could read the decoder, and it did read the decoder, came back with the number 3. I've tested this already, you may have guessed, but I hope you can pick this up, but you'll certainly pick this up from the sounds. So the next thing to do, this is a very short interlude, is we've got to put all this back together and get the casing on so that we can actually use this behind the locomotive. So stage 1, 1.5, maybe 2 completed, and the panicky bit all done. Now let's see how we pack this back together. In a recent comment on one of my recent videos, Dave Auger mentioned to me about having some kind of sound backdrop to the layout, given how much is going on. And it's an idea that I'd seen on other layouts, and I thought, oh, I might investigate that. But Dave's comment made me go and have a good hard look at what was out there. And there are sound modules you can go and buy that give you a number of choices of sounds that can play in the background. As with everything, I thought, well, that's all very nice, but that's what other people have, and I'd like something a bit different. So I spent a bit of time looking at which sites might be out there to provide sound effects that I might then be able to create my own sound backdrops. And what you're listening to now is the results of my searches. Interestingly, listening to this after a space of a couple of weeks from when I created it, it needs better balancing. And some of the sounds are too loud, and I think it actually needs 2 or 3 more sound effects to be put onto it to make it the right combination of sounds. But this is all taken from the BBC Sound Effects archives, which are available if you're going to use them for non-commercial purposes, they're available free. I have taken the precaution of buying licenses for these sounds because I was going to use them on here, and because my videos are monetized. I suspect I'm okay, but I thought, well, they were only $5 a sound, and the sound modules cost £30–40. So I've got 4 or 5 sound effects playing in the whole of the soundscape, which runs in total for about 12 minutes. Now, if you would be interested in me showing you how I went about creating this soundscape, I've put the sound file onto the video afterwards, after recording, but when I want to play it, I play it either through my phone, if I want to do that, or it would be very easy because it's now an MP3 file which sits in the cloud. I can send it by phone or play it on a Wi-Fi speaker. If you would be interested in how I went about creating this and creating the MP3 file, I would be happy to do that. I would probably do it over a couple of videos at least, because it's all done on the computer, as you might expect, and that may not be the most riveting view for any length of time in one of these videos. But I'm quite pleased with the results so far. I know I've got a bit more work to do to rebalance it, and it's easy to do that. And as I said, I think I need a few more general hubbub noises, because the noises that I've got are too particular. I've got one of a train station, one of a school, which fades out after a while, one of the church bells, which you can probably hear now, and I've got some birds tweeting. And I think we also need some general street hubbubby noise, and maybe even some noise of a market. And there are free software out there that allows you to put all these sounds together. And indeed, you can do some of the mixing on the BBC site itself. So let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in me showing you how I created this soundscape. Here you can see the tender, it's all back on, it's all sitting as it should. The only thing left to be done is to put the coal on, which is what I'm going to do in a moment. What I have to do is smear some YouChoos glue, which I have, to cover this area, and then I shall put a generous load of coal sitting over the top of the YouChoos, and that will give me the covering. I've put some double-sided sticky tape, which is on the top of the decoder and sticking and sealed against the edges of the gap to try and avoid any coal going down. I've also covered the motor, which is a coreless motor, remember, so it would be less of an issue of coal getting in. I've covered the decoder and the motor with cap tape. I don't know if you've ever seen this stuff before, which is a heat resistant tape which you can use for electrical connections, just to make sure that if the odd bit of coal drops down, it should just drop straight down and not find its way into any of the workings. Putting this back together was really a case of just manipulating all the wires to sit as they wanted. I had to take a bit more off the opening that I'd created in the tender top because it was pressing down on this side here, and the tender casing was not shutting properly. Having done all that, I have already tested it. It did make a sound, thank goodness, and the motor rotates even better. And I have reprogrammed certain of the CVs. I haven't yet given it its running number. It's still, the decoder number is still 3. But Zimo chips need certain settings if you're using a Tramfabric coreless motor, and Tramfabric say what they are on their website. So from memory it was CVs 9, 56, 57 and 58 which require adjustment because you're using a cordless motor. Those have been done. So what I'm going to do now is put the coal on, and the next time you see this, I hope, will be behind Seagull as she starts her maiden voyage as a sound-fitted locomotive. Before I finish, just one thing which I showed a while ago. These things, which are by DCC Concepts, absolutely worth their weight in gold, I have to tell you, because it was with these that I was able to bear the ends of, there we go, this wire. You set the size of the holes here using this depth gauge, and there are two holes. I'm using the smaller one, and if just this isn't, no, let's do it the right way around. Being left-handed, if I try and do that right-handed, I should end up making a right pig's ear of it. So that goes in there. It's been set for this size, and there you have, he said, knocking the thing, a stripped wire. I don't know how long it would take me to do that without this pair of wire strippers. I'll leave a link in the description below to DCC Concepts. I think I bought it directly from them, but you may be able to get it somewhere else online cheaper. I don't know, you can never tell. Again, this is not an affiliate link. This is just a piece of kit that is invaluable if you're going to be doing any soldering of very thin wires. And if you're using lights of any kind, if you're using decoders of any kind, you are constantly coming across very thin wire. So, as I said, next time you see this, it will be chugging around the layout, I hope. Well, there you can see the train pulled by Seagull in all its sound glory, going around the layout. The coal went on fairly straightforwardly, and it all went back together. The usual fun and games, putting together the bar that connects the tender to the motion in the locomotive. But I really am very pleased with the outcome of this, and she really does look fine pulling this rake of Grizzly Teaks along. I must confess, I think I've become a bit of a convert to sound conversions. Oops, pardon me, I'm trying to get used to the gimbal again. This is the second time I've recorded this, by the way. The first time it made me feel sick looking at the results. But this it's a really powerful speaker and makes a really good sound as it goes round. So I think what I'll do now is I'll cut to a bit of a running session before we bring this edition of Elvenhome to a close. Well, that pretty much brings Elvenhome to a close for this week, except for the third of the three things that I mentioned at the beginning that Dave Auger had suggested to me or asked about over the last couple of videos. One of the things that he mentioned was the Wi-Fi unit that I bought about 2 years ago that allows me to control trains using an iPad. And the Wi-Fi unit lives here. I bring it up, there it is, and goes into one of the ports on the control center. And I promised that I would at some point do a review of the how I found using it. In fact, I haven't used it very much. And I think the modelling gods must have listened to me, because no sooner did I tell him that I haven't used it very much then one of my handhelds has stopped working. And I contacted GaugeMaster. At the moment, the spare parts to repair the walk-arounds, one of these things, this is the one that's not working properly. It doesn't send any signal to the track. The spare parts just aren't available and won't be available before March. So I'm going to be using the iPad version using the Wi-Fi. So it won't be in the next one, I don't think, but certainly before, if not the next one, the one after that, I will do a review of how I've got on using the Wi-Fi. I did find with one or two locomotives that they just wouldn't respond, which was very odd. But I'll put it through its paces and do a review in a few weeks' time. As you will have realised, getting comments from people or being asked questions or being posed challenges are all part of the fun of doing YouTube for me and have been incredibly helpful. So please do let me have any comments on anything you've seen or anything you'd like to know. Or anything you would like me to run in running sessions, and I'll see what I can do. If you've liked the video, well, please give it a thumbs up. That's all very helpful. And if you haven't already subscribed, well, please do subscribe. It would be great to have you along. But until I speak to you in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.